ever feel like you're just like bombarded with advice on remote work? Like, where do you even start?
It can be overwhelming for sure.
Yeah, so today we're diving into the healthy remote worker,
Mm.
both the ebook and the video course,
hmm
to see what kind of actionable tips they have for, well, for thriving in the work from home world.
And one thing I found really interesting is how both actually emphasize the importance of having a dedicated workspace, like a home office.
Right, not just working from the couch.
Exactly. It's like having that physical separation, even if it's just a corner of a room, it can really make a difference in terms of creating a healthier work-life balance.
They actually suggest treating your work hours like a regular 9 to 5, right?
Yeah, like you're actually clocking in and clocking out, even at home.
Which I guess I can see that. It helps prevent burnout and all that.
Totally. And speaking of staying on track, the ebook suggests doing a weekly review just to kind of step back and assess what's working and what's not. Could be anything from, your schedule to how you've got your workspace set up.
So it's like, is this standing desk actually helping me focus? Or
Right. Or are you just better at pacing during phone calls?
exactly. And while we're talking about, well, about staying active,
Because you can't underestimate that, especially when you're working remotely.
so true. Both actually really emphasize moving around more during the day.
Oh, yeah. And they even suggest the Pomodoro technique.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, which it encourages you to take those short breaks, right? And it's not a new thing. It was actually developed back in the 1980s by this guy, Francesco Cirillo. And there are studies that show it can actually, help with focus and productivity and stuff.
That's so cool. You work for, what is it, 25 minutes and then take a short break.
Right, exactly. And they have tons of ideas for what to do during those breaks, like quick stretches or just stepping away from your computer, getting a glass of water.
Sometimes I feel like I just need to like look away from the screen for a minute.
Absolutely. It's those small changes that can make a big difference in the long run. And speaking of feeling good, both sources really highlight the connection between, well, healthy eating and productivity.
Which, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like when I'm snacking all day, I'm definitely not as sharp.
Oh, tell me about it.
The ebook actually gives this really practical meal prepping strategy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, where they suggest setting aside a specific day and time each week to just batch cook healthy meals for the week.
It's like having your own, healthy meal delivery service.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But without the delivery fee and all that.
Exactly. And it makes it so much easier to stick to, eating healthy when you've got things prepped and ready to go.
Absolutely. It's like setting yourself up for success.
Yeah.
And while we're on the topic of setting yourself up for success, we should probably talk about ergonomics. Well,
Oh, for sure. That's a big one, especially for remote workers.
yeah. And the ebook gets into it. They emphasize, having a comfortable and healthy workspace.
Like not just throwing your laptop on the bed.
Yeah. No, they talk about adjustable chairs, making sure your screen is at the right height, and they even get into specifics about like where your keyboard and mouse should be.
Which can be so important because it's about preventing those aches and pains that can come from like a poorly designed setup.
Oh, 100%.
And remember the 20-20-20 rule.
Refresh my memory.
Every 20 minutes, you take 20 seconds to look at something 20 feet away.
Oh, right, right. To help with eye strain,
Exactly.
which I'm definitely guilty of, just like staring at my screen for hours.
It's easy to do, especially when you're in the zone. But those little practices, they really can make a difference in how you feel throughout the day.
For sure. And speaking of feeling good, both sources get into like the power of mindfulness for managing stress.
Oh, yeah. That's key, especially when, your work life and home life are so blended.
Right. And they suggest just starting the day with a few minutes of like deep breathing or meditation.
Even just 5 minutes can make a difference.
Seriously. Just to kind of like create a calmer, more focused mindset.
Totally. It's like setting the tone for the day, and it helps create that, mental separation between work and personal life, even if your physical space doesn't always allow for it.
And it's not just about, what we do during the workday, but also how we take care of ourselves outside of work hours.
Absolutely. And the ebook actually touches on that. Like staying hydrated throughout the day is something they emphasize.
Which, yeah, it's so important, but so easy to forget when you're like in the thick of it.
Totally. They even suggest things like adding fruit to your water, just to give it a little flavor boost.
Oh, I love that. Makes it more appealing.
Right. Little things like that can make a difference.
Totally. And on that note of little things that can make a big difference, both sources talk about the importance of, you know, setting those boundaries with screen time.
Oh, huge, especially with remote work.
Right. because it's just so easy to be on all the time.
Exactly. They talk about this idea of a digital sunset,
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
which is basically like, reducing your exposure to screens in the hours leading up to bedtime.
So that blue light doesn't mess with your sleep.
Exactly. And to help with managing screen time throughout the day, they bring up that Pomodoro technique again.
Oh, right, those little breaks.
Yeah, because it's a good opportunity to step away from your computer, rest your eyes for a bit.
It's like a little reset button for your brain.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's, the sleep piece.
Sleep, the holy grail,
They actually have a whole section on sleep hygiene.
which honestly I think we could all use a little help with.
Right. Like, it's not just about getting enough hours, but it's also about the quality of sleep, right?
For sure. What kind of tips do they give?
Well, they suggest trying to stick to a consistent sleep schedule, even on the weekends.
Oh, that's a tough one.
I know, but it helps to regulate your circadian rhythm, like your body's natural sleep-wake cycle.
Right. Makes sense.
And they also recommend, having a relaxing bedtime routine.
So, no more scrolling through social media in bed.
Ideally not.
Ugh, fine.
It's about signaling to your brain that it's time to wind down. And they even talk about, making sure your bedroom is dark, quiet, and cool. Just creating that optimal sleep environment.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed a difference when I, actually make an effort to create that kind of space.
It's amazing how much of an impact it can have. And speaking of creating an impact, setting the stage for a good day, both sources emphasize having a consistent morning routine.
Which I'm hit or miss with that one, I'll admit. Some days I'm great, some days not so much. What do they recommend?
Well, they talk about incorporating things like mindfulness, maybe some light movement, even a little bit of goal setting, just to kind of set the tone for a productive day.
Yeah, it's like getting a head start on your day before things get too hectic.
Exactly. And that's what I love about all these tips. It's about, taking control and creating a remote work life that really works for you for both your well-being and your productivity.
Right, because it's so easy to just let those things fall by the wayside when you're, in the thick of it.
It's true. And it's about recognizing that your health and well-being, they're important no matter where you're working from.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. From setting up those dedicated workspaces and embracing those digital sunsets.
To, squeezing in those movement breaks and finding a morning routine that actually works for you.
It's about being intentional with how you approach your workday, even more so when your office is steps away from your living room.
It's so true. And what I think is so valuable about, both the ebook and the video course is that they offer those practical strategies, things you can actually start doing today.
Right. It's not just like a bunch of vague advice. It's like they're giving you a toolbox and you can kind of pick and choose what works best for you.
Exactly. And as you navigate, your own remote work journey, it's really about figuring out what works best for you. Like, what aspect of your well-being are you most, inspired to focus on right now?
All right. Is it incorporating more movement or setting stricter boundaries? Or finally mastering that whole sleep thing?
Whatever it is, just remember that you have the power to design a remote work life that really, truly supports you, both personally and professionally.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So until next time, keep those work-life balance goals in check, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.